Well, welcome to Tuesday. I told you I'd be in the same outfit because for you, it might be 24 hours. For me, it's only been about 5 minutes. Hopefully, though, you read the pages and you kind of analyze those conflicts. So the first thing, let's go through those. When you're dealing with the struggle of Carthage, okay, our two key players there is a guy named Hannibal. He was the most successful general to the Carthaginians, to Carthage, right? And Carthage was very, very powerful in Spain and Sicily, and kind of that connection to the western part of the Mediterranean Sea. So he's their most successful general, and what Hannibal is known for is taking his troops that included elephants over the Alps into Italy. Very obscure, difficult way. Why? I don't know, but it's a memorable historic event. And so, that's who Hannibal was. Now, the other person that you probably should have put down was Scipio. Scipio was a Roman general, okay? And Scipio, he kind of changed the game where when they get into the third battle, which we'll talk about because that's the next question, what are these called? He flips the switch. He takes his troops to Carthage, and Hannibal, being in Italy, has to make a decision. Do I stay here and defeat the Romans, or do I need to go and protect my people? So, Scipio's strategy kind of pulls Hannibal out of Italy and back to Carthage, and that's how the Romans win. Okay, so those were the two names you should have had there for the who. These were known as the Punic Wars. There were 3 of them. So this went on for some time, back and forth between Carthage and Rome. Okay, so those were the 2 places that they were being fought. Obviously, Hannibal gets to the Italian peninsula first, but then we know the wars end with Scipio bringing the Romans to Carthage. Why did these wars take place? Well, because Rome wanted to expand. Rome was about empire building, and so they decided that, to go now west, because they had a lot of the east, we need to take over Carthage because they are the powerhouse, and so that's why they took place. The outcome was that Rome does get Carthage, and, the Romans, kind of like the Greeks, the Romans were scared that the Carthaginians would come again, and so to make sure that that didn't happen, we had the Romans go to Carthage and, of course, burn it down. Loot first, and then burn it down. Okay? So that's going to lead us to the expanse of Rome. And, as empires get larger, there is one problem that always arises, is how to rule such a large amount of land and stay on the straight and narrow and, be ethical. And so in Growing Pains, what you start to see is that corruption happen. And really, this is where the Roman Republic starts to break down. So you already had magistrates. The magistrates part in this conflict is that they start stealing, they start looting their provinces, they start to break the rules of the Republic that was set up. We talked about those, the checks and balances and all of that. That starts to be ignored, and corruption is happening. I also put on the poor and the tenant farmers because as they're growing larger, as they're taking over more places, more slaves are brought in. And so slaves can do the work for free. And so now our tenant farmers are being put out of jobs. And a lot of people are moving into the city. Now, Rome does not see this, and Rome does not get scared that there might be a rebellion. So their theory is, let's give them free grain. You need money, but you know what? We'll give you free grain. Well, some people saw through this. And, you know, I'm not going to say I know exactly how to say these names, but you read about a guy named Grouchus, okay? Tiberius Grouchus, he was a tribune, so obviously he was for the plebeians. You know, he realized that grain is not going to fix the problem and tried to get the government to give out land. Well, his opponents didn't like this, and so they killed him. His brother Gaius tried to do the same thing, and the same thing happened to him. So the one name you should have on there is Grouchus, Tiberius Grouchus, as he is the one who kind of tried to alleviate this problem and get these poor people land so that they could farm. And, you know, he was killed for it. Then the second person you should have is Gaius Marius, and he was a consul. Again, he realized that you have to do more with these plebeians, these common people, your majority of the people. So what he decided to do is he decided to open up the army to the poor people of Rome. Now before, the only people who could really join the army were those who could afford to be in it. So the poorest of the poor were not able to serve in this capacity. So Marius allows the poorest citizens to join their army, and this is going to help them and benefit them because they are empire growing and they're becoming more professional. And on top of that, the government is paying for their equipment. They're having a job, a purpose, and when they then retire from the army, they're also given land. And so these poor people are seeing that the magistrates are stealing, and yet these commanders, these generals who are allowing them into the army, who are giving them what they need, and when they leave are giving them land, they start to become more loyal to these generals who are providing all of this for them, rather than the government whose solution was to give them free grain when, you know, they needed jobs. So this now is going to lead into from the Republic to the Empire, which is the reading that you're doing today. And this is where we get our good old friend, Julius Caesar. So you're going to read that chapter from the Republic to the Empire. Again, there are a lot of key players in this. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think. You could put a sixth one in there, but there are a lot of people to this. It's a different kind of war that's happening. So what kind of war is that? And I'll talk about it tomorrow, what kind of war it is and why that is important. We know that from this past section that the rules were starting to be broken. And so in this section, you're going to see a power of the Republic that is going to be highly abused by Mr. Julius Caesar himself. Again, when did this take place and what were the outcomes of these conflicts and wars? I've also attached a Newsella article for you to read, and it's called, it deals with Cleopatra and Mark Antony. So if you've been waiting for Cleopatra, this is where she comes into history. I told you before, she was not an Egyptian. She was a Greek. And the Greeks had control of Egypt, and then Rome took control, but allowed, their rule with pharaohs to still happen until, Mark Antony gets involved. And so we will talk about that story tomorrow. I'll still be in the same outfit 3 days in a row. Sorry.